Well, I hope that you're having a lovely day. I'm here to talk about books, and I think that you're here to talk about books as well. So I'm specifically here to talk about the books that I've rated 5 stars. Let's get started with my most recent 5-star read. Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This is a beautiful story and I love it. It's about an Irish man who lives the most ordinarily repetitive life, and he is steadfast in that life. But then one day something happens to where he needs to make a decision, and depending on what he chooses, his life will change, how people will see him will change, and then also how people in the town, in the small village where they live, it will also change how they see one another as well. So highly recommend Small Things Like These. I don't have a physical copy of this book because I read it as an ebook, which just goes to show you that favorite books can be found on ebooks or buy ebooks. I didn't used to be able to read them. When I was in high school, I tried quite a few and I just never remembered anything that I read, I thought because it was on a screen. But now I guess that I've had more practice and that it is easier to annotate, not easier, but easy to annotate on an ebook. I've just gotten used to enjoying books that way, especially because so many of them are free. Anyhow, the book is Just Kids by Patti Smith. Patti Smith is a writer and artist who had her start in 1960s New York, and this is an autobiography about her story as well as the story of Robert Mapplethorpe, who was a photographer and artist. I just love her clear writing style, and the whole book is just a rare glimpse into the art world of the day. There's a part where they live in the Chelsea Hotel, and I highly recommend this book. Another 5-star read for me is The October Country by Ray Bradbury, which is a collection of short stories, and they're all quite different from one another, which is really nice. Ray Bradbury is just a master of the short story in just the creativity that he infuses into each one. It's just remarkable. These are unlike any other horror/fantasy short stories that I've read. I recommend savoring these for, you guessed it, the fall season, and maybe reading them out loud with other friends or family can be really fun too. How to Love Your Daughter by Hyla Bloom. This is translated into English from the original Dutch. It's a thought-provoking first-point perspective of a mother's love for her daughter throughout her daughter's life. I loved experiencing the mother's reasoning, and the writing is superb. I like obscure endings, and this was definitely that, but not too much. So, The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. This book has a bit of everything in it, but it is all woven together so perfectly. It has themes like art, adventure, long-lasting love, family, addiction, loss, and I loved experiencing reading this for the first time. It is very good and I recommend it. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This one is no surprise. This is about Dorian, who has youth and beauty and attracts the attention of a young artist who paints his picture, and eventually Dorian falls into depravity and lives a life of debauchery, and instead of himself taking the toll for those things, the picture ends up taking the toll. So I'm sure that you have heard of this story or know of it, but 5 stars. It's very good. Oscar Wilde is a great writer and highly recommend. Next one is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I love the suspense in this book. It is about a young woman who marries the Lord. Well, he's not a lord, or I don't know, maybe he's a lord, but he owns this manor in the English countryside called Manderley, and she goes there to live with him, and she finds lingering signs of the past around every corner. And I couldn't stand the main character of this book. She just got on my nerves so much, but I don't mind that. That is not a negative thing for me, and I think that it adds to the conviction and the persuasion of this story especially. The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. I don't have my copy of this one because I'm loaning it to a friend right now, but this is about a man who meets the new tenant of Wildfell Hall, and he tries to befriend her, but she is very wary to share any of her past with him. And at some point we find ourselves in a story within a story within a story, and that makes it sound a lot more complex than it actually is. This is my favorite Bronte book, Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This one is a children's book that I read as an adult, and I am very glad that I did because it was just so good. It's filled with a childhood sense of wonder and magic. It's about a girl named Coraline who ends up finding herself in a different world or an alternate reality, and she has to find her way back home to a home that she now sees is a lot better than what she used to think it was. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. We all know about Frankenstein, but this one I found myself thinking about it for a long time after I finished it. So it's filled with a lot more themes than what you might think if you haven't read it. So I definitely recommend Frankenstein. Marching Towards Bethlehem. These essays by Joan Didion transported me in a way that nonfiction usually does not. Joan Didion's way of writing just cuts to my core, and I love it. So precise. I don't think that I've ever given another set of essays 5 stars, but I do love this particular collection, especially the title essay, which is Slouching Towards Bethlehem. All right, next on my list of 5-star reads, I have some poetry collections. The first one is 9 Horses by Billy Collins. This is a collection of poetry, and Billy Collins' poetry usually starts with a simple and recognizable image, and it slowly moves into something more profound. And I really like that style of poetry. I appreciate it, and I find myself going back to these poems again and again. Next is Ariel by Sylvia Plath. These poems remind me of a sort of heightened sense of reality. And obviously Sylvia Plath was going through a lot when she wrote this collection, but her style of writing reminds me of a mixture of a magnifying glass and a very bright light that would hurt your eyes to actually look at. And somehow she combines those two things to make beautiful poetry. And the sun has definitely come out now, and it feels very nice. The next and last collection of poetry is, it was funny because I accidentally grabbed Common Sense by Thomas Paine instead of Christina Rossetti at first because it looks the same. It's the same edition. Goblin Market and Other Poems by Christina Rossetti. This one for me is a 5-star read, a lot because of just nostalgia. I've loved Christina Rossetti for a long time, and I find myself going back to them over and over. If you don't know, she's sort of an English version of Emily Dickinson, in the way that she was single for her whole life, and she wrote poems in isolation. She focuses maybe a little bit more on death than Emily Dickinson did. They were both reclusive. Yeah, if you have not read any Christina Rossetti poems, I recommend picking up a collection or maybe just going online and reading some. I really like her poem called At Home to start with, and I really enjoyed Goblin Market as well. And that's all. Thank you for joining me. Let me know some of your favorite 5-star reads in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day. Bye!